Okay, so we're going to start a topic that we're calling status of the embryo today. Now, just as a warning, this is obviously going to cover some relatively difficult material, so please do feel free to stop this video at any time. We're going to start with a little bit of the science and what the embryonic stages actually are. So the first stage is what we call the germinal stage. So the germinal stage is from conception, that is from the moment that the sperm enters the egg, until the next stage, the embryonic stage. The germinal stage is typically it's weeks 0, so right from the beginning, to 2. And what happens at this stage is that the cells begin to divide. And they divide in slightly different ways. But the thing itself is a sort of distinct entity that starts traveling to its permanent location in the womb. The next stage is called the embryonic stage. So I'm using embryo broadly here, up here in the title. This is actually when it's an embryo. So this is the embryonic stage. And the embryonic stage is weeks 3 to 8. So in the embryonic stage, it begins to look a little bit like a human. As you can see from my drawing, not exactly like a human, but it begins to look a bit like a human, and it gets the first signs of a brain with a neural tube. Now, this is not a brain. This is a tube that that will form the nervous system down here, and later will form the brain. The next and final stage is the fetal stage. So the fetal stage is essentially the rest of the pregnancy. There are some interesting milestones in there, but the fetal stage is a large term that it includes, let me just correct that K, that's going to annoy me, that includes weeks 9 till week birth, weeks 9 till birth. And you get, kind of everything going on there. You get a brain developing, and the rest of the human. The organized activity so essentially organized brain activity, which is the brain actually working as a brain, is roughly from week 32, so quite late. Okay, so that's the embryonic stages. That's something we're going to need to know. We're going to go into a little bit more detail in the next tutorial on that. I want to talk now about one of the big issues for us, because this, of course, is an ethics course, which is, of course, abortion. So abortion is defined as the deliberate, so what we mean by deliberate is that someone has decided to do it, ending, so this is the causing of an end of a pregnancy. So that's what we mean by abortion. Now, abortion's not the only issue in embryonic ethics. It's obviously a big issue, and one that people feel very strongly about. So we're going to try and deal with it with as much delicacy as we possibly can. What I would say is what we want to do here is we want to understand why people believe what they believe on both sides of the debate. So let's talk a little bit about the status of the embryo then. There are many, many different views about kind of, let's put this in a kind of meaningful colour. When it becomes a person. Sorry. So when it becomes a person is a little bit different to the idea of when it becomes a human, right? So a human is something with our DNA. A person is something that kind of, by definition, has rights, moral rights. So there are many different views on this. Let's just go through a couple. We're going to, again, go through this in a lot more detail in a later tutorial. So let's start with Catholics. Catholics believe that it is from conception. So the germinal stage, in other words, from the moment that there is a distinct entity. Others take slightly different views. We're not going to cover them all now, but the philosopher Bunin, for instance, argues that it is not from conception, it's actually much later. It's the thing that we value in other people, which is organized brain activity. Okay, so that is right down the other end of the spectrum. It's down here at week 32. And finally, we might have someone like Singer, another philosopher, who argues it's not even just organized brain activity, it is later than that. It is when the fetus or the baby is capable of having preferences. Because what we value in ethics, thinks Singer, is the ability to prefer one thing over another. There is also another way of seeing kind of the debate, especially the debate around abortion. And this is really a debate between, on the one side, the rights of the mother, so the woman's right to choose, because it is, of course, her body. And on the other side, the idea that abortion trumps that because abortion is murder, because it is the ending of a human life. So we're going to look at all of these different issues. We're going to spend a little bit more time, don't worry, not very long, on the science, just to understand exactly what each stage is, so we know what we're talking about. Then we're going to spend a little bit longer going through a whole range of different views on the status of the embryo, and then we're going to look at the debate specifically about abortion between these two polar opposite views.